Here we go.
Let's do it.
Here we go. 3, 2, 1.
Boom, and welcome to the Big Honker Podcast, brought to you by Pacific Game Calls. I'm Jeff Stanfield with the world famous Andy Shaver.
I am here. Another hot day in Texas. It's July.
5 more weeks.
It's coming. It's coming. We'll get cold weather here.
Six weeks probably. 42 days. We'll get our first cold front. Be around September 10th, 11th. We should get our first actual legitimate chance at a day where the highs are in the 70s. Could be 110 still.
You're full of shit.
No, we've had that happen.
We've had it happen,
So
but
I'm
not in the
saying
last
September.
decade.
Yeah, it has. You just didn't notice it.
October 11th.
Fuck that. That's fucking way
That's
too
what it
damn
was
long.
last year.
Before we cooled off, it was
September was
hot. Yeah,
miserable.
I forgot we had a 113-day dove hunting.
Miserable.
Yeah, miserable time.
All right, on the line with us today, Mr. Ben Commodore, up there in the great land of maple syrup, Cloud9 Outfitters.
And Canadian football.
What's going on?
What do you think about force fetching, Ben?
You love Canadian football?
How do you feel about force fetching?
I don't like Canadian football. But yeah, we got a lot of heat over that one on the last go around.
Yes.
Probably should clear the air on that and have a little chat or clarify that a little bit.
Okay, first thing I want to clarify is it is my fault as an interviewer, the way that happened, because I've told you offline, we had another podcast scheduled right after you. We were running up to him, and that was a topic that I'm sure I opened up, and I did not have time to dig deeper. So it is as much on me as it is you as an interviewer, because that is something that I should have devoted more time into and let you expand on your thoughts.
What are we talking about?
Ben was on last year, and we talked about a couple hot button issues, and things went off the rail. And poor Ben here he caught a lot of heat.
What was the rail?
Force fetching, right?
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
it was kind of around the conversation of force fetching and yeah.
I remember this conversation now. Okay, that's why I was
blew
asking.
up Facebook and everywhere.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway, if you would like to clear the air now, we can do that and dive off into it. However you wish to proceed here.
Sure. I mean, I guess kind of what was lost, and I had intentions today of re-listening to that podcast so that I could write down exactly word for word what was said. But regardless, I guess kind of where it went off the rails for me is I'm not opposed to the force fetch. I obviously see the value in it and understand why professionals especially utilize that method, because it's you're pretty much guaranteeing that the dog will pick up when they go home with the owner. Plus you're on a clock.
Right.
As a professional trainer, you're on a clock. I guess the direction that I was going, or maybe to clarify or clear on my end, I guess be more of a dive maybe into the breeder side of things. But just along the lines of, the necessity of it, if we're breeding, if you've got a dog that has that natural hold, that has that natural retrieve, then the force fetch doesn't need to happen. Now, I'm sure there's going to be flack immediately. Guys are saying, well, that's not what force fetch is. Force fetch is all about pressure and teaching the dog to turn pressure on, turn pressure off. And I think you can do that in other ways. Now, if the argument is that, hey, I'm going to collar condition and I want my dog to know how to turn pressure off and run with pressure, then that's the direction that you're going to train. That's the direction you're going to go. Obviously, I saw some comments about, I'd like to see you get a grandmaster and a master title and all this stuff on these dogs without doing that. And I feel like that's kind of a separate argument. I guess I would just question that if the game requires you to go down that road, then maybe the game needs to change. And then immediately there's going to be headbutting. Those that know me know that I am a huge fan of British bred Labradors over American bred Labradors, just in the demeanor, the way they carry themselves. It's just something that works for me, my family, my operation up here. Kind of over the years, I've got American bred, I've got British bred Labs in the kennels right now. While we're doing this, they're sitting in their kennels. And that's where we're kind of, I guess, there's a difference of philosophy when you get to that point. But I guess I want to clear the air in that I was not necessarily knocking people that do that. I just think that there are other ways that can be done, especially for guys doing this at home, have never trained a dog, or have only had their hands on 2 dogs. Mm-hmm. There's too many things that can go wrong if you don't understand the pressure, you don't understand what your expectation, and what you're looking for in terms of reading that dog.
Right, because force fetching, that's one of those things. Lou was force fetched, but I did it with my grandfather, who has 40 years of experience doing it. I would never feel comfortable to put my dog on a stand back then as a first time dog trainer and be like, okay, we're going to force fetch. Cause I think you are 100% correct. If you cannot read a dog, if you do not know when to let off, how much pressure to apply, you can ruin a very perfectly good dog by force fetching it if you don't know what you're doing. The cost benefit analysis
Agreed.
is it's way off.
Correct. And I mean, I know there's tons of video libraries and programs out there, but the one thing that those that's that specific dog. And just like kids, no one kid, no one dog is a cookie cutter exact same at any point through any of it. And I do think that while you can watch videos, it's still, you need the way to do it. And I mean, as of recording this, we just discussed a little bit before we started, frustrations run high.
Yes.
There's 2 videos circulating or multiple videos circulating of 2 different individuals that not condoning behavior at all, frustration, heightened level of stress, whatever. And statistically, we as men handle stress a lot differently than women. You find women dog trainers are typically a little bit softer. They're a little bit more patient. Mm-hmm. And so I think that there's a lot of things that can go wrong. Whereas, my method, or not my method, I didn't invent it. The method that I follow revolves a lot around using of a clicker, marking the behavior. And I am a huge fan of the treats. I feel like we whine out treats a little too fast. I've talked to some cadaver dog guys. I've witnessed and watched police dogs do demos, and they still to this day will utilize a treat and or a tug, which is, while I understand the retrieve is a reward, it's still something a little different. Mm-hmm. And so I think there's other ways to do it without quite as much pressure. I feel like there's a lot of good dogs that were washed out because they could not handle pressure, but would have made fantastic hunting dogs. And there's the whole conversation around the idea of, does the guy that's hunting, in a 60-day season that hunts, tries to hunt every weekend, may not get there because of family commitments. Does he need that dog that comes off that grandmaster hunter that's going to sit on the couch and go to the lake the rest of the year?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You look at that. I mean, that's a lot of go in a dog to come from a grandmaster champion to now his offspring is sitting on the couch. You know what I mean? Like that's a lot of pent up. That's a lot of pent up dog that is just waiting to go out, and you're gonna see behavior that you don't like out of a dog that is bred to do one thing, and you are doing the complete opposite with that dog.
Agreed, and I think that there's the argument. Or the conversation, not argument, the conversation that I hear guys talk about, and I actually heard it at Delta, had a conversation about it at Delta, the idea of you're handing the keys to a Ferrari to a guy that's got to sit in rush hour traffic every day.
Right.
He needs the Civic. Yeah. He needs the Accord. He needs the mid-size, whatever, sedan. He doesn't need the sports car that he can't open up because he doesn't know how to do it.
Right. That'd be like having a Belgian Malinois
you can go
as a pet. You know what I mean? Like it's bred
You know what?
as a fucking land shark, and you expect to domesticate this thing and have it be a dog that you can roll around on the floor with? Thing's gonna tear your face off.
Yeah. Like all the people in the cities, that's one thing I notice extensively when I especially when I go down to the States for Delta or any other trade show, but the sheer volume of people that have pit bulls in the city, like what, that dog doesn't get a chance to expend its energy other than going on a leashed walk. I wouldn't recommend taking it to an off-leash park.
Right.
So, right. Like, and then you can also go down the avenue of the way the dogs are bred and the way the dogs are not bred. Sorry. The way the dogs are tested, and that the American standard and what they're looking for with, especially in the field trial game with long marks, lots of them. It's all about speed and straight line and clarity. Versus if you go over to Britain and how they do things, where it's a lot of honor and control and quiet and steady, and you're really docked on, your heel work, you're docked on your honoring, it's a night and day difference. And, I've heard somebody as well reference, it's like taking a rugby player and asking him to play professional NFL football. He's a hell of an athlete. He can probably do okay at it, but you take an American lab and ask him to go do a British trial, or a British dog and ask him to do an American trial. You're taking two incredible athletes and asking them to do something they're not used to doing or bred to do in that situation.
Yeah. You're asking them to play a completely different sport by a totally different set of rules. So let me ask you this, and I'll try to circle back to some of this force fetching. Lou passed away over the weekend, and now I'm looking at probably, more than likely, my next dog is going to come from Double T British Kennels, Corey in Kansas. He's got a phenomenal line, all British dogs. What can I expect to see differently? Because Lou was an American dog. He had a lot of those traits that you just mentioned, a lot of drive, hard-headed at times. Jeff's nodding his head. What can I expect differently with the new
a smaller dog?
Well, obviously a smaller dog, but demeanor wise and everything else that I'm getting ready to, and that's going to be this spring. It's going to be after hunting season.
I think that, I don't know the lines. I'm not familiar with any of the offspring, just kind of up here. I haven't seen too many of them. I have heard of the kennel. Seems like a very reputable kennel. Heck of a lines. Obviously, if you guys are looking at them, you've done your homework, you know where you're going. Yeah. Traditionally or typically, like I've got a 2-year-old and I've got a 5-year-old. I actually recently just acquired, and both of them, one was bred here, but she's an offspring of an import, and the other one, Meg, 5-year-old, she's actually worked over in Scotland for about a year. The biggest difference I find between those two and then my 3 American bred labs, one is it's almost like they have control of themselves. And they have the ability, like with your guy and your American, probably when he was younger, bouncing off the walls a little. It didn't take much to get him excited. That creeping, that dancing on the line. If he was steady, he's dancing, he's ready to go, he's up. What I like to say is an American bred dog's on its toenails, you're trying to bring it back to its toes. And I feel like with most British bred dogs, they're on their toes and you're bringing them down to their heels. And it's just that little bit of extra clarity that they have, that little bit of control. And the other thing too, that I have found personally, and it's pretty, I'm sure guys listening are going to say the same thing, soft. Typically British bred labs are a lot softer. I know with Lady, my younger one, if I so much as raise my voice, she is like, that's the equivalent of some heavy-handed pressure with an e-collar or whatever the situation is, or like a leash tug. That's the equivalent of that to her. Meg, not quite as soft, but definitely still softer than, say, Minnie or Nala, 2 of my 3 American bred. But then Daisy's also, she can handle a little bit more yelling voice or vocal. It's like, hey, and she doesn't shut down. Whereas if I yell at the yellow like that, it's like, hey, smart enough, listen to me. Like we're trying to do a cast or something. It's a little different. I think that would probably be the biggest thing. If they're coming from quality lines, they're going to be, you're still going to have that drive. You're still going to have that desire to go. But yeah, that would be the biggest thing is the clarity.
And I mean, you hunt in hectic situations. I mean, you're doing snow goose hunts up there. I mean, you know, and you know, that's a fucking world of its own. You know, there's a lot of stimulants there. And I mean, you know, all of your British dogs, they got plenty of go, because that was kind of the knock, you know. I mean, you got your American labs and they're a little bit, you know, they're bigger, more drive. So, but I mean, you haven't noticed anything hunting Brit labs, and I mean, you're doing it every day, you know, every day that you can.
Yeah. And I mean, I think there was some confusion that came originally when this started, and guys confused British and English bred labs, which are two different. Like the English is more your show line. They're your blockheads. They don't have an ounce of drive because that's not what they're bred to do. They're bred for their looks and a whole different. That's like taking a hockey player and asking them to play football. Or not even. I don't even think that's a fair comparison. Whereas the British are all working overseas, and you know, it's one of those things. I have sat on YouTube and watched a lot of like the IGL stuff that they do over in Europe, and I honestly, when I'm sitting there watching that, I'm like, this in my head. That's what I'm like. This is what the average duck hunter in the United States is looking for. They're looking for a dog that's steady with a heck of a nose, that's able to go. It's got all the power in the world, goes and picks up their birds. When the hunt's over, it curls up on the floor when it gets home and it goes to sleep.
Right.
And the next morning when you get up to go to work, it goes and lays down and goes to sleep. And it's just, you know, so that I think you're gonna have all the drive, you're gonna have all the power that you're looking for. I think biggest thing for you is probably from a handler perspective is obviously being mindful of reading that dog and the level of softness and how they respond to, you know, even just, you know, using body, like your body placement and movement as pressure on a dog. But just the way you stand over them when you walk towards them to try and get them, you know, that head look up to sit, all of that stuff. I think you start paying attention to maybe a little bit more. You should be doing that with an American bred as well, but yeah.
Yeah. And I should clarify, Corey has been a sponsor of the podcast for the last, 3 years. So each year he has brought out 2 or 3 dogs. So I've hunted over several of his dogs in the past. And I mean, yeah, I've not noticed anything out in the field, but I've never been around them, you know, in a family setting or anything like that. And definitely not in a training session. So I'm going to be relying on guys like you and Corey whenever we do dive off into this with our new puppy, because my dog was perfect for what I needed him to do. I needed him to hunt 7 days a week. I needed him to, he was not, I mean, up until the last couple of years, citizen wise, he was always into shit. You know what I mean? Always, you know,
a teenager.
If we have trash left out, he's pulling shit off of the hell. Just before he died last week, he was eating the kids' leftover pizza on the bar. It's like, what the fuck? You're 11, dude. You knew I was gonna catch you.
He didn't care.
You knew I was gonna catch you, right? And I mean, drag him off the fucking bar and thump him on the head, and it's like, what are you doing here? But for what I needed at the time, he was perfect for me. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So, and this next dog will be perfect.
And that's, yeah. And you know what? One thing that I always, you know, I've heard guys talk about it on other, like when you listen to other podcasts or you talk to other guys at shows like Delta, that, you know, Yukonuba had that booth there and they had a whole bunch of guys, the trainers there. Good friend of mine, Josh Miller. We've talked about it. And, you know, the dog that you have today is the right dog for you at this time. But the dog you get tomorrow or the next, whatever, you know, in your case, your next dog is going to be infinitely better than the dog you just had because of everything you learned with that dog. When you get better as a dog trainer, as a dog handler, you know, you're getting a little bit older, you're 11 years older, you've got that much knowledge in life, your ability to control emotions, you know, you understand you know, when you open the trailer door, when you take the clients out, you know exactly what to expect now. 11 years ago, that may have been, you know, you still had an idea, but you've got 11 years of experience under your belt to know what's going to happen more than you had then.
Yeah, there's no way at 25 years old or however old I was whenever I got Lou that I could have handled a British Lab. I mean, it wasn't in my it wasn't in my forte. I was in my mid-20s, and I mean, you're still rip roaring, and your ego is what it is in your mid-20s. There's no way I could have handled a British Lab. But I made Lou into what I needed him to be, and he did it. And you're exactly right. Like what you put into that dog is what you're going to get back, and I got everything back that I put into him. So this and it's the maturation of me is going to play a big part in this next dog.
And then the dog after that, it's just that building and yeah, I think it's just, you said a very good word there in the last one. And I feel like this is something that I'm constantly trying to check in with myself, with both just with all the fortunes in life that I've been afforded with, my experience in the industry, working for, when I worked for Dive Bomb, now my opportunity with my outfit, and just the growth that I've experienced, use ego. And I think that's a big thing that whether you just check in with yourself on that all the time. And like you said, you wanted that hot rod of a dog, and that's what you thought you needed. Your ego maybe needed that. And you've realized, I don't know that I needed that when I'm sitting at the lake or sitting here recording a podcast and this dog's just kind of pacing a little bit, right? Like, you got to wait till he's 5 and he settles down.
Right. Yeah. And I also didn't have kids back then either. And kids have really that makes you a more mature person. You know what I mean? What you look for. You're right. You don't need that hot rod of a dog that you think you need in your mid-20s. Whenever you've had kids and you've gone through that, and your patience develops a little bit more. So I'm excited. I've I always figured my next dog would be a British dog. So it's here now, though.
I'm excited for you. I'm curious. I'll be curious to check in with you next year and kind of what do you how do you, if you remember, because you've got to go back 11 years now and remember your last dog is a puppy, but that process for you and how different it may be and how much you enjoy or dislike it.
Yeah. That was another thing with Lou is my Jeff's dad and me, we trained him every single day in the summertime. We bought a house in March or April, and we brought Lou home first part of February. And obviously, the first couple months you're just doing the fun shit, bumpers and heel and sit and stuff like that. But April and May rolled around, and every 5 days a week we were at his place and, working on doubles and all the fun stuff. So this will be my first one solo. Yep. So that's going to be different. The whole thing's just going to be a different process. I'll have my kids along with me, so they'll get to, whenever they came around, Lou was a finished product. So they just kind of took for granted what he could do, and, sitting on a whistle and taking hand signals and stuff like that. So it's going to be fun having them have a vested interest in this dog.
Well, and they're going to also help that dog with distraction. You're going to have that extra set of hands. Whereas, with Lou, you were probably, like you said, you're doing everything for the most part, solo or with, you go out and do some heel work while the kids are playing in the yard. And it's like, there's a huge distraction over there. Focus here.
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned the clicker. You use a clicker? And that's part of your routine? Yeah. What is that? I've not seen this.
So I should have grabbed one, and I've got it upstairs. But funny enough, it actually stems from my wife. And I don't actually think that I even mentioned that in the last podcast. So kind of my approach also stems from her. She has a PhD in behavior modification in children. As you can imagine, in today's world, she sees a lot of different things. Mm-hmm. And I really lean into her heavy when it comes to training, and kind of the smart ass response I always give is, I think kids are a little harder than dogs to figure out.
Right.
So she was actually the first one that ever mentioned the clicker to me, and kind of we dove into it. And I start looking into it, and I'm like, well, no, that you got to do it this way because this is how it is. And she's like, no, this will work. And so with Daisy, actually, which I have not hunted Meg yet, but I know what Meg's capable of. But Daisy is my ace. She's the go-to. And Daisy was the second dog I brought in, and the first one that I force fetched with Minnie, went to Daisy with this clicker and this idea of positive reinforcement. And she is, I posted a picture. We killed 411. She was the only dog on that hunt. And we only picked up what was in the hole. She was on cripples. Like, I have no doubt in my mind that dog will pick stuff up. And so the idea with the clicker is it marks the behavior. that you are looking for. So it's almost like you ignore the rest and you mark the behavior that desired. So with me, when I come in, I call it loading the clicker. You put a bunch of treats down on a place board, and every time the puppy picks up a treat, I click. And so what you're doing is you're pairing the treat to the click so that they learn that it's kind of like Pavlov's theory when you ring the bell, whatever. And what that allows you to do is you get further along in your training. So when you start running, say, T pattern, and that's a good one that a lot of guys start to go, well, how do you use the clicker with that? So I do it in my yard. You send the dog, whistle, sit, click. You did the right behavior. Because I'm starting to work on whistle sits, I guess a little bit with T pattern or before, but you marked the behavior, which once you click, dog knows they did the right job. Now you can walk and deliver the treat. If you don't have that marker, you've got to be, when you blow the whistle, inside of 3 seconds, you got to put a treat in their mouth. Mm-hmm. I'm a bigger guy. You're smaller than me. I ain't running that far. I'm not getting 50 yards in 3 seconds.
Right. So how do you, when do you start to pull the treats away? So I'm assuming, let's say you got a brand new puppy. It's on its place like you want it to. Click, treat, right? I got it. And then sit, treat, heel, click, treat.
So I actually kind of do it a little different in that I don't talk to the dog until the skills develop. So with place, it'll start with a puppy. You've loaded and the reason I load it on the place board is because I want them to be curious of that board, and everything goes around that place board. Your entire life's going to revolve around that. When we're hunting, for the first year or two of their life, they're fed. You sit on place and you get released off place to go to your food bowl and eat. And so I don't say anything with Lady. I don't think I said a word to her in training until we were probably 4 weeks into training before I paired sit and place. And the idea is that I want you off body language alone to communicate that way. Because I could tell the dog, the Malamutes, we brought that up earlier. Some of the police guys talking German. You compare any word, any language with the dog. They don't care.
They don't speak English.
And so it starts with the puppy. Yeah. So the puppy steps on the board, even if it's one paw. Click, here's your treat. Well, then you can see the bulb click of like, well, when I touch this, I get what I want. So that when they're consistently say it's one paw, they're touching with one. Now I'm going to up the ante and I'm going to make you do 2. And you'll see them put 1 and they kind of start thinking, and then they start getting more, and it evolves to stand on, to sit on it. And once they get up, they're standing on it. And then you can use your body to kind of get over top of them a little bit. If they need the help, their butt comes down. As soon as the butt hits, click, treat. Within a week to a week and a half, that dog's getting on the place board as soon as you get near it, and they're sitting down looking at you.
Gotcha.
Now you start working on the recall, and you can say I communicate, but you're like, hop, 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 here, pup, here, pup. They come off, they come to you, click, treat, and they're going to run right back to the place board just as fast.
Right. Interesting. So yeah, this is like a Pavlovian approach that you've got.
Yeah, and you're just. The question, the statement my wife made when we all started this was, are you trying to suppress behavior or are you trying to change behavior? And the argument came down with Minnie. If I don't have the e-collar on Minnie, whether it's a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a year, she's not going to be as crisp and as dialed as if the e-collar's on. We're all guilty of that. Dang it, I wish I put the e-collar on the dog. They're not listening to me. I got to go get them. You just let them out for a piss or something. Right. So the idea was that you are changing behavior so that the dog understands that I want to do this all the time, not just because dad said so. And so you asked when I phase the treats out. I will pull them out randomly, and that's where the value of variable reinforcement comes into play with the dog. And that's why even using collars should pull the treats out every now and again, because it reaffirms that there's a reward coming. You just have no idea when it's coming. So you need to perform all the time. It may be 2 weeks of training session. It may be the entire month of July that I don't pull out treats. But at some point, Daisy, there will be one session where all of a sudden there's a treat coming out of my pocket. And she's like, there it is.
Right. Right. And she was always on her A game, anticipating when that was going to be. I
Correct.
wonder
You phase it out.
Yeah, I wonder, because Lou was a whiner too, the hot-blooded American lab. I wonder if I would have, instead of reacting to the negative behavior, given him a treat when he was quiet, if that would have fixed anything.
Yep.
I think you're trying to fix something.
I think that helps.
Well, the whining, it was annoying at times, and I would lean on him. You know what I mean?
Yep. I find that that's one thing I think you'll notice as well with your British over the American is quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And the example that I've heard guys talk about from that have been at the trials over and just from the little bit I've seen on YouTube, but when a dog yawns and they kind of give that little bit of a whine or something, from what I've been under the impression in my conversations, what I've watched on YouTube, if a dog does that overseas, you're out, come back tomorrow, try again. Yeah, that's a fail. Before anything else, that's just, you're gone because they don't want noise. So I feel like you'll notice that difference alone with your.
That'll be an interesting change and observation that I'll have to make.
Mm-hmm.
But it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun. So let's switch gears a little bit. You're working for Ducks Unlimited wetland restoration. You said
part of that job is also forage, getting our farmers to seed instead of seeding canola or wheat, to seed it to grass to help with the pintail population and our native grouse. And then that's pretty much it. Try and do a bunch of that. And then, in between hunting season, keeps you active with your farmers too.
Well, and we were talking a couple years ago, and I can't remember how they were wanting to switch the farmers in Canada to when they planted their wheat, to where it would come off at a different time. That way it's not interfering with the pintail nesting. Have I got that right, or did I fuck that up?
I don't think that they were ever successful in doing that because they're still planting it at the same time.
Right. So now the thinking is if they can get more grassland up, it would help with pintails?
Yeah, that seems to be the trend, or at least what they're trying to do, especially in high traffic areas. Like we've got, without getting too crazy, but we can see kind of hot areas that are known for producing pintails. And then you look in those areas, if landowners it's all landowner driven. They phone us. We want to plant grass. We'd like part of your forage program. We'll pay them X amount of dollars an acre to seed it to grass. And then they have to keep it in grass for a minimum of 10 years. That's the contract agreement.
Right. And then the thinking is that'll give pintails a place to put their nest because they're tall grass nesters, right? And that's kind of why they aren't as successful breeders, is because they make their nest in these wheat fields, and then the farmers come in harvesting it and decimate the clutch. Right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
At one time, they wanted to put chains on front of John Deere tractors. I saw this a long time ago, that they would drag in front of the tractor. They had these arms off of it, and it would raise and would maybe push the hens up, and they would get out of the way of the plows. This was something they tried to do in the 90s, and I guess that
wouldn't do any
didn't work.
good for eggs on the ground.
No, but it was trying to at least save the hen. Instead of her sitting on the deal and then getting run over by the tractor, she would flush her up, and then the tractor would go and do what it's going to do anyways.
But I don't know if that does anything to put new birds in the sky.
It doesn't help on the birds. It just saved the hen.
Right.
I mean,
but I don't know how many hens are dying to the wheat harvest anyway.
There's probably
mature hens.
There's probably a bunch of them that probably get run over by the tractor.
The spraying will kill them, especially here. We've got a lot of guys doing it with planes, which that's you're a whole different style. Like you are one of the baddest men in the world if you're able to fly those planes the way those boys do.
100%. Those crop dusters are a different animal. I've seen them go underneath the telephone wires.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got a whole other set of balls on you to do that. Good for you.
That's why them pilot seats are different. They got a hole where they set their balls at when they sit, so they don't sit on them. Right. Because you got to have a big old sack to do that shit. Now you got to have more balls to do that. That's one of the few jobs. That and the dude that hangs out of the fucking helicopter that works on the electric lines. Mm-hmm. That guy's got a set of balls on him too, and them guys, and bull riders and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Man, I can't imagine flying a plane underneath.
They do it all the time. They do it all the time out here.
Yep. That's why there's no old and bold pilots.
Yeah, you can be one or the other. You can be old or bold. You're not going to be both. What do
Bingo.
you? So they're tossing around the idea of, obviously it'll probably never get passed, but it is on the radar of a 3 pintail limit.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen that?
I've seen that for you guys. For me, the pintail, it
doesn't count.
guys. This is where guys start getting mad. Yeah, we're 8, and it can be all hens.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the 3 limit. I think the thing that people don't realize stateside is the sheer volume of hunters, and that's why the limit is lower than it is up here, or even in Mexico for that matter. Yeah, I mean, the population's doing well. When we have water, everything does well. We've had a lot of water this year. We've got a lot more of it this year. I think it's a delicate balance of you have to obviously manage the species. You also have to keep guys interested. And, if you've got a heck of a duck shoot and it's predominantly pintails, it's a hard sell to be like, yeah, I'm going to go buy my license. I'm going to get up and I'm going to go out and shoot my one duck. It's the same idea as, Pennsylvania, if I'm not mistaken, at one point, or some of them are like a 1 goose limit.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not going to keep anybody interested.
So,
you're not going to recruit new hunters with a low bag limit like that.
Correct. And that's why I think like the snow goose thing took off as much as it did, because of the high limits, liberal limits. There's basically, it's as close to it as a, wild west as you can get when it comes to snow geese in the spring. Electronic collars, all that sort of thing. So yeah, I hope it happens for you guys, because that tells me that the pintail population is doing enough that it can sustain that. It's the yo-yo back and forth of like 2, no 1, no 2, no 1, no 3, no 1.
Yeah.
That I don't like that, because it gets guys in too much trouble. It's your responsibility to read the regs. I understand that. But, the weekend guy that goes out a couple times a year to the public land, is he reading them? And it's, it is ultimately his fault, but you don't make it easy to keep him hunting either, because if he gets a ticket because he shot 2, I'm not doing this anymore, it's too confusing, and now you've lost a hunter.
Right. Yeah. It's always funny. Like when the pintail limit does change, I'm always like, what is it this year? Is it 2? Is it 1? Because for a while we could shoot 2, and then it was 1. Is like, pretty sure it's 1. So we got to open up our phones, and it's like, oh yeah, it did pass. It is back down to 1 this year. So a little bit of consistency would be nice on that front. But you're exactly right, though. Like people always point at Mexico and like, oh, you can go down there and you can shoot however many, and they don't have the hunters that America does. They don't have the volume of hunters.
No.
Day in and day out, putting pressure on these birds.
There's more duck stamps sold in the state of Arkansas than the entire country of Canada.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
No, that was a stat that was floated around. We're less. I think the last number I heard, Canada has less than 1 million duck hunters.
Oh, jeez,
yeah.
I did not know that. So yeah, Arkansas alone accounts for all of Canada.
Yep. In the duck stamp numbers. So you think about that, the size of footprint of Canada, and you put all those hunters in Arkansas, where most of these ducks are trying to get to for their wintering grounds. You've got to manage that.
Yeah. Yeah. What was this last snow season like? Did you see a bunch of birds? Are they doing well? Because there's even talk.
The fall was fantastic.
There's even talks about in Texas not doing the conservation order here.
They already got rid of it.
Oh, it's gone?
It's gone.
Okay.
Yeah, you guys are gone. And then I've heard rumblings and rumors that you're going to start to see the rest of the snow goose season across the Midwest in the spring disappear. I had a conversation with a biologist that sits on the Central Flyway Committee, and he told me that right now, and keep in mind, this was back in the spring, but right now the snow goose numbers are roughly the same as they were in the late 90s before the order came into effect. The difference is we're trending down, then they were trending up. And the biggest argument or the biggest kind of conversation, if this wasn't a part of the equation, I feel like the snow goose season, they would have already got rid of it by now because bird flu did its job, did what hunters were supposed to do. But that's the dilemma of, if we get rid of this, we're not going to get it back because the data tells us hunters didn't do anything. Hunters didn't have the impact we thought we would. So once you lose the spring season, even with an increase in population, the only argument would be it's for more opportunity. We don't have a scientific impact on this. We're not going to deter the numbers. So, I've heard guys talking, and him and I chatted, and he said he could see places almost culturally, like Missouri as an example, seems to be a really hot spot. In the spring, Arkansas, in the spring, they want to hunt snows, and most often they don't touch them in the fall. So you could see them move their fall snow goose hunt, not have it in the fall, and allow it for X amount of days in the spring, snows only.
It's going to be a horrible economic impact.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to kill like the Stuttgart area. They've gotten a bonus because their duck hunting dropped off for a while, but they got the specklebellies there. Right. Then they get the spring snow goose hunt. Like where we are, we have dove hunting for 2 months. A lot of dove hunters. We're busy. So we start hunting in September and we go all the way through the end of January. Those guys are November, December, January, and February because they got the regular season and then they got the extended. Well, their regular season ends, end of January, middle of January?
Sure, and they're close to us.
And they're going to be done. But Arkansas and Missouri are two of the states that I have heard that they're going to become some of the next ones to leave it. We are going to see the end of the conservation season probably in the next 5 to 10 years, unless something drastically changes. Because let's face it, we're hunters and we're not part of that. They don't need us. They don't think. And a lot of the legislation is done by people that don't hunt and don't care. So there's nobody standing up for us anymore. So I think we're probably going to lose the spring snow goose hunting nationwide in the next decade. I feel for a lot of guys that make a living, that's a big part of a lot of people's work. I mean, there's a lot of guys that guide. That extra 2 months of guiding gives them a job that they can do. They're going to cut that in half. They're not going to be able to do that, a lot of them.
Well, and like you said, Ben, like when it first came on board, it was, we got to do this to put a dent in the rampant snow goose increase. And it turns out like it didn't work whenever you look at it like that.
And that's, I agree with you, Jeff. I actually think it's going to be 5. I think 10 is being gracious. I think within the next 5, it's gone. It's one of those things that, because a guy sitting in a field, I mean, my biggest shoot to date is 411 in the morning. I don't know too many guys stateside that regularly, several times a week, are kissing 400 birds in a morning or in a day. That's a tall task. I mean, is it safe to say, am I being overzealous and saying 100 a couple times a week is generous, or is that about average?
I think that's generous. I think your average snow goose hunt is probably right around that 20 to 25 mark.
Yes, I would say that's easy.
Yeah. So with that, even if you take that and there's, say 50 outfitters just in Arkansas doing that, you're not touching them. You're not doing, this gets into the whole other conversation of decoying versus jump shooting on snows. And a jump shooter is more beneficial to the idea of the conservation order. I'm a decoy guy myself. Let's decoy them. I'm not into the jump shooting. But if you're looking at it only on what the intent of that season was, then the jump shooter guy is having more of an impact on the population than the decoying guy.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. If you were serious about putting and Jeff has said this, if you were serious and the end goal is we've got to do by whatever means necessary, we got to get that snow goose number down, you would go to their breeding grounds and you would step on eggs.
It's so funny you say that. There's a Facebook group, and I don't know whether it's Hardcore Waterfowl, one of those ones. And there's a guy on there that's actually from the tundra. He's a status native here in Canada, and he posts that they go out and they harvest the eggs.
Yeah.
Now, the question that people often see asked on there is, how do you know what the snow goose egg is versus what the specklebelly egg is if they're all in the area? but they go out, they collect all the eggs. He had one picture, and I don't know, there's 500-600 eggs in there, and he's like, "This is going to feed my village for the rest of the year." That guy has the real impact.
Yeah.
So,
like, let's not monkey about and say that we're for doing this and not, are you really? Like, is that really what you want to do? Because if it is, like, this is the steps that you would take to have the most impact and get rid of the most snows.
I wonder how many of those eggs weren't snow goose eggs that he had, or Ross. I wonder how many of them were Canadas or specks or ducks or whatever. Because I've got a real issue with the Inuit type of stuff. Now, you're Canadian, you think different than me. I'm from Texas. We don't have a lot of Indian stuff here because we played Cowboys and Indians years ago in Texas, so we think different. I don't understand the Inuit stuff, and I don't understand anybody getting a step up or getting to do anything extra because your ancestors were not good at fighting a war hundreds and hundreds of years ago.
Hold on. Back.
I just don't get it.
You don't understand how they can use modern technology and reap the benefit of.
If they want to live in a fucking sealskinned hut and use a spear, hunt year round. I don't care. But if you're going to use boats, motors, Benellis, no plugs, Boss shot shells, you shouldn't be getting to hunt year round. It's a different game. If you want to do that to sustain your family, then you do it, but you do it the old-fashioned way. That's just me. And I know I'm not the only person on that's done that because I've had people reach out to me, just like I'm gill netting these lakes. It's bullshit.
Oh, so the gill netting drives me nuts.
Of course, everything. There's something that they do that they get by with that wears everybody out. But collectively, we let them buy and buy and buy, and I don't understand that. That's just the way I am. I know I'm not the only person that feels that way, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that think completely opposite of me on that way. But I don't think you should get any kind of special privileges when it comes to harvesting wild waterfowl, bears, elk, deer, whatever it is, just because you grew up in a certain area. I don't see it. What's the difference in some hick that lives in West Virginia that lives in the Appalachian Mountains? We don't let them hunt deer year round. They're native to that area, and they've been there for hundreds and hundreds of years, inbreeding just like everybody else. We don't give them special shit, so that's the way I feel about that crap. So all that hunting up there, and I watched that Life Below Zero. I love that show, but man, the people up there that are hungry are not very good hunters and fishermen if they're hungry.
The one thing I will say for those boys up there, the cost of living up there. My wife years ago when she was in elementary school did a student exchange, and she went up there, and she has a picture on her phone. And this was like, we're talking 20 years ago, and it was $20 for like a 1 liter. I don't know what that is in gallons for you guys. Thing of Welch's grape juice, and it was $20 for this thing. I can't even begin to imagine what it costs now. Like, for them to get eggs on a regular basis, and to eat meat, like, does it make it right that they don't have to have licenses and stuff? That's a whole other ethical conversation. That's a whole historical conversation. So funny enough, years ago, actually during COVID, I took a group of guys that were status native here in Canada, did not need a license, did purchase their license, even though they didn't need it because they felt like they wanted to give back. And they wanted to make sure it was the right way. But the odd thing for me they were allowed to shoot ducks in a spring conservation season. And I remember having a conversation with the guy. The first group comes in. Go ahead, guys. 3 of them stand up, and all they drop is hen pintails. I'm like, guys, you got to shoot the white ones. I can't I can't stomach this. Shoot the white ones. There's no excuse. You can tell the difference. So they did. Next one's banded. But we had a conversation about, I said, would you shoot a swan if it came in, or a crane, or any of this? And interestingly enough, he's like, the only thing they would not shoot, other than like owls and eagles, because that was a whole other, but of the waterfowl that we hunt, he was not interested in shooting a crane, and he really didn't want to shoot a swan either. And I think some of that was, whether it was, to do with their beliefs and that culture that he came from, and his forefathers and that sort of thing. But it's interesting when you talk to the guys that are actually hunters and that are still hunting. A lot of them kind of get it and do understand it. I'm not going to say that there's some that don't take full advantage of it. I mean, there's we're just as guilty of it. There's going to be guys that are going to mud stomp a whole bunch of wood ducks, I'm sure, here in about 3 weeks. They're just going to take advantage of it to shoot, but yeah, it's one of those things that I really think it's been mismanaged from the start when all of this happened, and you're too far into it now. You can't make drastic changes the other way without it in today's climate. I mean, if the world thought like you, Jeff, I think the world would be you'd have a heck of a different president.
Yeah, right.
But we sure hope we get one now, and the next one we get, and hopefully y'all have a better one too.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. I think we're going to see a better one, but it's an interesting conversation around what they can and can't do, what they're allowed, the money that goes there. It's a real hot topic up here, I think, when people really start talking about it. And it's kind of one of those ones that, I'm open to having the conversation about it, but I tread real lightly on it just because of there's too many of both sides of it. And up here, I deal with both sides way more frequently than you guys would ever do it in Texas, especially. I mean, just crossing the line into Montana, you guys still call them Indian reservations. Mm-hmm. The term Indian, we haven't used that it was native for a while, and then Aboriginal, and it's First Peoples. If you use the word Indian, it's almost like a racial slur at this point up here.
Well, they call it First Peoples.
Yeah.
Okay. So are they Japanese and Chinese?
They were the ones that crossed the land.
I mean, they crossed the bridge. I mean, so by God, what, we're going to have a big sale on egg rolls now up there? I don't understand why. I have such a hard time understanding why anybody gets anything fucking free because of what kind of blood you have in you. In Canada, if you went to Canada in 1800 and you carved out your ass, you worked your ass off up there. It was cold. It was miserable. There wasn't no handouts in 1800 in Canada. You busted your ass. You scraped. You did everything you can. But then we're going to give stuff to people who don't do shit. And I just do not understand that. The whole mindset of it is, we were in Prince Albert. That's okay. We were in Prince Albert, and they had a line coming out of a thing. And I thought freaking Garth Brooks was in concert or something in this little town. I asked the guy, I go, what's going on down there? He said, oh, it's Friday. They give the free money out to all the
checks,
whatever you call the people. What'd you call them, Mingo? First people. First people. We're getting their checks. Yeah. Why are they getting a check? Why can't they get off their ass and get a job just like me and you? Why do they get a check? I mean, when you go through in America, and it's not every place is that way, but when you see an Indian reservation, it looks like a damn junkyard. Then you see a ranch next to it that's beautiful and it's progressive and it's growing and they're making money. And then you got this junkyard again and it's another reservation. Why do you get a check just because things were tough 200 or 300 years ago from your family? And I'm not saying we did the Indians right, because we didn't, but it's life. You got to overcome it. I don't see us doing anything for the Irish people or the Chinese people that built our railroads. They don't get shit. So I have a real issue with that at all countries. And I don't understand though. I've got a question about Canadian politics. Does Trudeau, do they have term limits for y'all's presidents, or can little fucker just go on forever?
No. He can go on forever.
Boy, that sucks.
Yeah. Well, he's not going to win the next one.
Well,
I will say to the check thing, what I would like to see at this point, like you covered it, we didn't do them right. Life moves on. Instead of the government giving them money, that, not saying all of the tribes or bands or places utilize it right. Let's invest in services to help. Let's, mental health, whether it's addiction counseling, that sort of stuff, trauma response. I feel like that's, it's like handing the guy that's panhandling on the street. He's asking for money to survive, but he doesn't have the skills necessarily to budget and to manage his money effectively. And you're giving them all this money that they know is coming again, instead of let's help you help yourselves to build a better life. That's what I would like to see more of.
But what do you do?
I wanted to.
But what do you, we've been down this road for 40 years. I'm not against you. I'm just asking you. For 40 in America since 1964, we've been given handouts, and in 2024, 60 years later, it has fucking not worked at all. So you go to the sides of town where they send all the money to, and they're all shitholes. They ain't getting any better than they haven't in years. You tell me what we can do to set aside to make people, because in America, you can get free schooling. You can get education. You can get babysitters. You can get a cell phone. You can get housing. You can get food. You can get an allowance to drive your ass back and forth to school or to doctor's appointments. What else do we need to frickin' do besides give them a trust fund?
I think this kind of ties into that snow goose argument that or conversation that we had earlier. It's we set out to give these people a leg up. Help them out.
Yes, we did. I agree.
But we didn't do anything, like Ben is saying, to backfill that and make them smarter, make people smarter financially. It was just, I can spend this and I don't have to do anything, and I'm going to get this again next month.
Yeah,
we didn't do anything to educate anybody on how to use this money as a leg up, not as this is what I'm going to live my life off of for the rest of my life. This can supplement me in creating a better life.
I'm not debating anything both of you guys said. I just want to know what it is that we could do to make a difference, because you go to California, which is a shithole in itself, horrible shithole.
Yep.
I mean, and everybody in California that's not a bleeding heart liberal will tell you that it's bad. But what are we doing? All we're doing is print money. We give them money. We give them a place to live, but we can't make them better people. We can't make them strive to want to get out of that to have more. All they want to do is survive. They don't want to live. We've got the same thing with our housing projects in Knox City, a big portion of them. Those people don't want nothing. They are happy surviving month to month to month and never having anything extra. So I don't know what we can do to incentivize them, because looking at their neighbor who has more, damn sure hasn't incentivized them. That has me.
Right.
I want to have more than I grew up with. I grew up fucking poor. I don't want to ever be poor again. I know what it's like to be poor. It ain't fun. And being poor in 1970s is not near as bad as being poor in 2024 is. I don't think.
I think the answer to your question, or at least where my head goes initially when you ask that question of what can we do differently, when we make these decisions with what we're doing with money and housing, is not having politicians virtue signal when they're doing it. Like, oh, look how much money we gave, vote for me. And instead having politicians making decisions that are meaningful and impactful that maybe aren't as sexy to public opinion.
Right.
And, we can get, think of yourself at 18 years old. We talked about it with your first dog. At 18 years old, I hand you a house, I hand you a paycheck that's coming in every 2 weeks that is money you've never seen before. Oh, by the way, there's a family violence of daddy's a drunk and he beat you all the time. And so you've got trauma, you've got all this stuff from when you were an infant all the way through. And we're just going to hand you this and hope you can figure life out. I mean, I know at 18, I grew up in a stable home. And if you did that to me at 18, I'm a totally different person than I am now, having had to work my ass off to buy the house, to, all of that. And I think that that's the hard conversations of the politicians saying, okay, we're not going to issue you as much money. We're going to take that and we're going to supply you with services, or we're going to work with your leaders to come up with the services, and the leaders have to be invested in doing that too. And I think we can go down this all day and we can solve the world's problems doing this.
Kind of like school loans. When I was in college, I did not have anybody in my family that had been to college. So I did not have a route or even an opinion or some advice from someone that could say, hey, Jeff, you can go to an Ivy League school if you want to. You're very poor. You're going to get a scholarship anyways. Go to this school. You can get a grant. You can get an apartment. You can do everything. You can go to any college you want to. I didn't have nobody to tell me that because I didn't know. And if someone would have did, I'd have probably taken some different routes in my life. But I had friends of mine that were getting college loans, and guess what they were doing? They were living in the best apartment complex. They were eating out every night. They were going to Padre every year on spring break. They were doing this. They were going skiing. They were doing shit. And they were spending that money they were getting for their Pell Grant every single month, or their loan they got. Well, now those same people on my Facebook are bitching and whining because they don't qualify to get their student loan taken care of. They've been out of college for 30 freaking years. Why haven't you paid your college loan off? I mean, that's the part so giving you something money-wise is not a good thing. And when I was 18 years old, if you given me an apartment and you'd have paid me $600 or $800 a month, shit, I'd have been happy as hell for a little bit. Because what the hell? What else you do? Go out. You ain't got to worry about your bills are paid. You got an apartment to live in. I mean, I just don't know the answer. because I hear what you're saying, and I wish we could fix people, but there's more of them now than there are of us. The takers are more than the givers, and we're in a serious problem in the United States. I don't know about Canada, but in the United States, my problems with Canada is there ain't no Canadians. When I go to a big city in Canada, I don't see a son of a bitch from Canada there no more. They're all from Pakistan, India, Bombay, anywhere but fucking from Canada. And if y'all had to go to war and y'all had to rely on those people to fight for your country, y'all are fucked.
The Chinese.
That's why we're friends with you guys.
No, tell it. I said this the other day. Mexico and Canada, the best thing ever happened to those countries is being next to the United States, because we've made sure that the communism has not taken over.
I wonder. So here's what I'm thinking. You said 18. I wonder if you made 25, you can start getting some of these benefits. Because like you said, if you're 18 years old, you're getting all these perks. You're not going to do anything to advance your life. And what's going to happen is a decade is going to go by a lot faster than what you think it's going to go by at 18 years old.
Yes.
So now all of a sudden you're 28 years old. You've got a family. You've not done anything for the last decade. And you're not going to do anything for the next decade. So no government handouts until you're X number of years old, 25, 30, whatever you want to make it. I don't give a shit. But just you have to have those formative years, those early years of adulthood to go make your life.
I'd even go a step further and say that if the government could work with employers to incentivize employers to go, same idea, there's check boxes that need to be met to ensure that the money's there, whether that's however they decide that, but go get a skilled trade.
Right.
You go get a skilled trade. I don't know how y'all are, but we're in desperate need of skilled trade workers up here. Seems like it's the same everywhere. Yeah. Go get a skilled trade. That's a skill you'll always have. They'll never be able to take it from you. And you have the ability to, you've learned basic life skills that you can continue to be a journeyman for a company. You can start your own company. You can branch off into engineering if you feel like it, or you can go a whole different route, but you put 4 years into something. It's like, what's the Norwegian company country that makes their citizens do like 4 years of military service? No, Israel does that, but isn't there another one? Like, isn't it like Norway or something that does that too?
They don't have no damn military up there. They're relying on the United States.
That's fair.
But
we all are.
Well, they damn sure are there, because I saw them bragging about how their standard of living was so great because they don't spend any military. Well, fuck yeah, because the United States defends your ass. Yeah. But you are right. Yeah, everything you said. I've never met a poor plumber in my entire life, and damn sure not now. If my son, let's say I had a kid that's 18 years old, and he come to me and he said, "Dad, I want to be a cardiologist," I'd say, become a fucking plumber.
Right?
You make more money.
Yeah.
The government will leave you the fuck alone, and you can work your own hours. Yep. And you're not going to get a call at 3 a.m. to fix something. And if you do, you're going to bend them over the damn counter, because that's what everyone else does. Plumbing, electrician, any skilled worker is the way to go. You can't find them. I was around an 18-year-old or a 20-year-old kid this weekend, works for another outfitter kid, called him Moose, big sumbitch. I mean, this kid's 6'5". Looks like was it Bear? Looks like Gronkowski. Big old kid, nice, polite, hardworking kid. Dad played defensive tackle at Michigan. He had a full ride to Michigan to play football. He don't play football. He guides hunts. He works hard. He hustles. He drives a concrete truck a couple of days a week to make extra money. That kid's going to go far. If you're a young kid in this country and you got some dog in you, and you're a hustler, you're going to be a rich, rich, rich man, because 90% of your fucking buddies ain't going to do shit but sit at home, play video games. And then they're going to wake up at
Dana White said that.
Yeah, and then
then
at 45 years old, you're going to have everything you want. You're going to get on vacation. You're going to get to live the life you want, and your buddies are still going to be living in fucking mom's cellar or their house, which is now passed down from grandma and grandpa because they died, because they're not going to have nothing. So go to a trade school and learn something, and you will be a very successful person.
Yep. And that's literally just had this conversation last week with my wife about, like, I've got a 1.5-year-old son, and it's, that Dana White has that whole spiel of, like, if you're even remotely a savage, you'll run over everybody, which is exactly what you just said, Jeff. And that's what I want to instill into him, of, like, just be hungry, be a little bit hungry. You'll run over everybody. The world is there to take. Go get it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean there's more ways of making a living, and I was guilty of this just coming from the small town that I did, but there are so many ways that you can make a dollar now. I mean, with social media being what it is and your reach, I mean, you can start any company that you want. And if you've got the grit and determination and the passion to see it through, there's no reason in the world that there's no reason in the world not to go make something of yourself. It's easier now than it ever has been before.
Amen.
I mean, maybe not the ideal way to go do it,
Right.
but look at that Hawk Tua girl.
Exactly.
Right?
Boy, she
Right.
screwed up.
Why?
She lost.
Yeah,
Did you see her deal the other day? She went to a concert and she did the Hawk Tui and nobody paid attention. Her fame's over.
but in that 15 minutes,
Right.
she should have capitalized quicker.
Bingo. She should have got
T-shirts, merch.
OnlyFans.
Or, she'd have made a lot of money doing that too, I'm sure.
And she didn't even have to take her clothes off. Just wear a fucking bikini or lingerie or some shit you'd be wearing to a pool anyways. We just come back from Mexico the other day. Fat chicks wear fucking bikinis that are eating their ass all the time or their bathing suits. Everybody's wearing a thong now, even when they don't even mean to. Put a bathing suit on, have you at OnlyFans, make $10 or $20 million in 3 months, walk off 10 years from now, be like, I wonder whatever happened to the Hawk Tui chick.
Right.
Oh, she's rich.
Yeah.
And she screwed up. She should have done that. Trust me, if I could cash in right now, my ass would be in a Speedo selling tickets. But nobody gonna pay no money for that.
I said the same thing for years. Ain't nobody want to see me on an OnlyFans account. Otherwise, I'd have done
Yeah,
it.
me too. I mean, it's just good. If you're a good-looking, young, attractive girl, and you don't have to take your clothes off, same shit you wear at a pool and a beach, get you want to make you some money and cash in on it. But she did. She screwed herself. But like Andy said, there's that opportunity. We're at a hunting show this weekend, and the waterfowl business especially, there's more people that have found little gadgets to make a living out of than anything in the world. We've got the girls in there that have the IG accounts that are making a killing that absolutely don't know shit about hunting, but a lot of them are making a lot of money. Mm-hmm. Some of them do know about hunting, but there's a lot of them that don't. You've got guys in there that make all kinds of little gadgets and shit they sell. There's companies. I'm wearing a Hurricane Mars shirt right now. I'm giving them free plug. I love their shit. I bought 2 of these while we were there. I don't know that Hurricane Marsh does anything other than making some clothes they sell at a hunting lodge. I mean, that they sell for hunters. But they were making a killing. The guy at the retro camo, found a huge market for selling stuff people have in their closet. Smart kid. Hats off to him. Yeah. But there's tons of that stuff. It's not like it used to be back in the day because the internet has given us so many more opportunities.
But you got to be willing to hustle.
Agreed.
You have to hustle, and they don't want to hustle. They do. I got a friend of mine in Knox City that does swimming pools. He puts Christmas lights up and he does swimming pools, and he shares them on Instagram. And everything on a swimming pool, he knows how to fix or do above ground pools, everything. These companies send him stuff. He tests them. He puts stuff on his YouTube channel. He gets paid from Amazon when people buy stuff. They get a link to it, and he gets some money. He's making a good side gig, hustling, and all he's doing is videoing and taking pictures of his swimming pool and his Christmas shot lights he puts up. Good for him, and God bless him. That's the opportunities we have, but he's hustling. He ain't playing fucking video games in mom's fucking basement at 40 years old.
Right.
Bingo.
That's the difference. So I don't know how we've gotten off on this topic, but how are things looking for this fall?
Good.
Yeah.
Good. We had a above average, I'd say above average, very above average, or at least the last 5 years in terms of water this spring. The hatches look good. There's lots of broods kicking around, lots of ducklings, tons of goslings. And the pintail numbers, I mean, just this spring watching them come back, because I can't always gauge that's kind of the tell for me during spring when you're scouting or even when you're hunting, and the volume of pintails this year was through the roof. At least in the areas I was looking, so anecdotally and kind of where I was. But everywhere is wet. Everywhere has had water. We're getting into that rain that we had that came through now. That's the first rain we've had probably in about 2 weeks. It didn't last very long, but we were wet when we needed to be, mm-hmm. and now we're drying up. But those ducklings will be able to get to the bigger water by now. So I think it's going to be good. I have not heard any indication. Have you guys heard any on kind of the bug hatch way up in the tundra yet or not?
I've not heard. as far as bird.
I
As far
haven't.
as them eating?
We got David and Jimbo on Thursday with DU, and we'll find out a lot more about that, of what's going on. I've heard mixed stories. I've heard it's real good. I heard it's not very good. I've heard we've had a really good hatch, and I've heard it's really not very good. So I don't know. I know mallard numbers are going to be down again this year, which is going to be a trend for a while probably. And then the blue wing teal numbers will be exploding because you can only shoot them for 2 weeks and then they'll be gone. So everything else in between.
Blue wing teal this year has been incredible.
Yeah,
really? I got a picture on my phone. I was doing some stuff with DU and I was out for a walk and I bumped a hen. And so I go over to kind of cover the nest up for her because she obviously wouldn't have the opportunity to keep the heat in. And I did a quick count. She had 20 eggs under her.
Oh, shit.
Wow.
I was like, holy smokes, girl. You got to be hurting after that. I got the picture on my phone. But yeah, the blue wing teal numbers should be really well. I had 7 nesting in my backyard here and they're long gone now. But yeah, it should be good. I'm hoping for another snow hatch like last year because those juvies were absolutely incredible last year.
Yeah. Now, do you mainly shoot a mixed bag every morning where you are, or are there times where you're just shooting big honkers and then you get the specks and then the snows?
Yeah. So if you're like, I guess mixed bag, when I hear mixed bag, I think ducks and geese. So yeah, like when we start our season, the first 2 weeks of the season are mainly giant Canadas. We will have specks, and it seems like the specks are coming earlier and earlier and earlier.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just talking to Mike. He works with Dave Smith today, and he was saying, he's like, we'll have specks here in early September flying over, going down into the valley.
Oh, wow.
And I'll have them flying over the house middle of August. So it seems like every year so we'll have, but early it's predominantly honkers and like big boys and ducks. And then as we get into late September through the middle of October, I just say everything.
Yeah.
It's, the specs start to move out, the lessers show up. And then as we progress November, December, we're just giants and mallards.
Yeah. I wonder if the specs, I'm really, really intrigued with them and I've just gotten that way. I was really, really bitter because whenever I was growing up, our area was predominantly lesser Canadas. And then when they moved out, the specs, we were very, very lucky in the fact that our areas didn't just completely dry up. Like the specklebellies moved in and took the place of the little Canada goose. But I was always real bitter towards the specklebelly because I was like, I really loved shooting lesser Canadas. So kind of hated specklebellies, you know what I mean? But looking at them through like a research lens, I want to know what's going on with them because they're everywhere now.
They're working. Like whatever they're doing is working.
Yeah. But like their territory is expanding. Like you said, their migration is getting earlier and earlier. You can mark it on a calendar like first part of October into September, we're going to have specklebellies here. Now, 10 years ago, it was Halloween. And then it was October 15th. And now all of a sudden, right around my birthday, end of September, we start seeing specs start to show up.
We also, back then, we would have some specs that were here early, but we would like my business, I would opening weekend. Sometimes we didn't even hunt opening weekend. We'd wait till the second weekend till the Canadas got here because we didn't have enough specs. Now we're like Andy said, we're covered up. We'll have 50,000 birds here October 15th, calendar birds every year. And it's crazy. I was talking to Roy Carter, I guess on the podcast or at his booth, we were talking about calendar ducks. And they have ducks show up like that in Kansas, the certain ones, they get their big number after you get a big push. A friend of mine I talked to today that was in Dodge City, Kansas, told me he saw teal today there.
Oh, wow.
And so, first of August, we had a bunch of teal here. We've had some teal here that nested here, but I don't see them like I did a month ago. But then we get them back here. Like we'll have them again around August 15th or 16th. We'll start seeing flocks of ducks. I don't remember what day it was last year. We walked out here and there was 2 big flocks. Remember. We had a north wind hit and it was in August and we had 2 big flocks of teal show up overnight. So, and when we have water here, we'll have a lot of ducks. We're going to have a really good duck season this year. We always get 3 things. It's 3 things to run our business. I need a good economy, I need cold weather, and I need water. I think in 35 years of being in business almost, that maybe's happened one time that all 3 hit. Well, the economy sucks. So we're wet and we're going to have a cold winter because we always get 2 of the 3. Never get all three. So we're going to have a cold winter this year just based on that because I have water. So
It might be like baseball and just bat 1 for 3, bub.
I hope not. We're shooting for the 2 for 3.
I hope for your sake and for mine that it does get cold because I like it when it gets cold. What I really hope for, and this is one thing that I think a lot of guys pay attention to, is they're like, oh, it's getting cold in Canada. And one thing I'm kind of noticing and seeing, and I know a lot of other guys have talked about it, so I don't feel bad talking about it, but it's the snowpack.
Yeah.
And it's watching how much snow we get because there's bodies of water with the development of cities that never freeze, no matter how cold it gets. I mean, we've had minus 40 days, and I've had ducks have toughed that out for a week because the water doesn't freeze. It's the access to food, and the big one we're seeing now is they're hitting the grain piles for the feedlots. Well, if you can cover that with snow, I mean, I know they're warm. I know they're going to melt the snow anyways, but if you can get a big enough dump of snow that covers that, so they got to work to get it, they'll just get the heck out of Dodge. And that's what's going to push your migration. The cold helps because it'll push those ones that just don't want to tough it. But for the big push, the more snow we get, the more beneficial that is for you guys.
Yeah. Did you guys ever get a big snow? I mean, I'm just kind of thumbing through your Instagram and I see ground underneath all of your any snow hunts that you have. You can see the dirt underneath.
Yeah, the one time it snowed is there's one there. If you're looking, there's like 4 snows that dump into the decoys, and we killed ducks in that field too. That was the most snow we had, and it was just enough to be like, yeah, okay, we can use snow covers. But otherwise, I mean, we had snow geese here till the middle of January.
Wow.
I know a group of guys that went out on the last day of the season on December 23rd and tried their hand at snow geese, which is like unbelievable.
Yeah, they should definitely not be there at that time of year.
Back in the day, we used to have snow. When I got in the hunt business in the 90s, it would snow from middle of Oklahoma all the way to the Arctic Circle would have snow in the wintertime, November, December. Sometimes it wouldn't be till after Thanksgiving to Christmas, but by December 15th, you had a snow line from Nebraska on, big snow, and all the food would cover up. And that's something that everybody talks and bitches about the hot water and stuff. If we had regular winter and snow, those birds would migrate again. And they're not going to go to southern Louisiana unless some bitches want to eat sugar, because that's all they grow in southern Louisiana now is sugar cane. Same in South Texas. Snow geese aren't going back to South Texas because we don't have the food for them. They don't have the habitat anymore. But we've got to have a regular winter, and we haven't had it in years.
Correct.
When I look on, I'll see an Instagram message in December, and it'll show some guys hunting in Canada, and like Andy said, there's no snow on the ground. I'm like, what the hell? That was I bet when you was a kid growing up, you didn't have many Christmases that wasn't white. Did you?
I was just about to say that. Agreed. And now most of them were just, I'm trying to think the last true white Christmas. We've had cold, like kissing minus 30 Celsius, but most of them, there's not enough snow to get you excited. Like to make you like that magic of Christmas.
Yeah. And you watch any Christmas movie that was 60s, 70s, it's snow all the time, everywhere from Chicago to Kansas City to Omaha, Denver. It was all snow, and it's not anymore. And that has more to do with our wildlife or the migration than anything does. Is that snowpack?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Agreed. And we need it just as bad too, because that's what helps establish out of this drought. Because that runoff is. I say this every year, and I say it in jest, but at the end of March, if we had 10 feet of snow before the snow geese show up, and that melts over the course of 2 weeks. Oh boy, the ducks are going to be happy, and the snow goose hunting is going to be wet and muddy, but it's going to be a lot of fun.
That's going to be a bitch to run a hunt on your end, but still, to what end?
Yeah.
So, how can people get a hold of you if they're wanting to book a hunt this coming winter? You got any room on the books?
I got 2 left, so we're kind of pushing everything to next year. I've got one of them I'm not too keen on booking. I've got a group coming up. Actually, Boss is coming. That dirt coming, so just kind of get prepped for them and make sure everything's extra dialed, and the guys need a rest when you're running for 3-4 months straight. They wouldn't give you guys a bit of a 3 days off of just scouting instead of stupid early mornings. So but yeah, reach out to me, Instagram, website, cloud9outfitters.com, the number 9, and phone number 403-363-8883 on the website.
Perfect. Well, listen, Ben, we appreciate you. It's been a lot of fun, and it was good seeing you in Baton Rouge. I'm glad you made it home safe, and you only got a month left. It's going to go by in a hurry.
It's going to go by way too quick.
We're here, my friend. Take care of yourself up there. If there's anything we can do for you down here, just let us know, okay?
Appreciate it. Same to you guys. Thanks for having me.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
You guys too.
Ben Commodore, Cloud9 Outfitters. A couple dates left up there, so you want to head north of the border.
Wouldn't it be nice to live somewhere where in 30 days it's really going to change dramatically, weather and cool off?
Oh, well, I mean, it's going to change here. It's just maybe the
Not
weather.
dramatically.
Well, we'll be busy.
Oh, we're going to be really busy, but I would
Busy.
nice for some cooler weather. I do not want any more of those 113-day dove hunting days.
No, it's miserable.
Those were hot. All right, thank y'all for listening to us. God bless you. I got a couple deer dates left. If anyone wants to shoot some deer, I got 2 deer left, I think. Maybe 3. 2 or 3 deer I can sell. Should be a great year. We've had a wet spring and summer, a lot of horns. Saw 4 really, really nice bucks the other day in a bachelor group. 2 of them were shooters, and they were still in velvet, so it should be a good year for horns. Look forward to it. Thank y'all for listening to us. Appreciate you. God bless you, and have a great day.
Love you. Bye. Watch for deer. Check out all of our sponsors. Go check out MLR Graphics, Boss Shot Shells, Pacific Calls. Use our promo code BHP25, Dive Bomb Industry, Dirty Duck Coffee, Shin Gear, Looking Glass Podcast, Lucky Duck, Ducks Unlimited, Double T British Kennels, Mothbird, Alpha Outdoor Specialties, Simple Farm, BHP, Mallard Bay, Mitch Hall, and Stanfield Outfitters.
I'm doing it at the house. I'm doing it at the house.